All right, and here we are. This must be the next video. So now it's time to talk about Resilient File System, or ReFS. I know you're excited, so let's get right to it. So Resilient File System, ReFS. This is a new file system built using code from the current NTFS file system. Now, at the moment, ReFS is not just a replacement for NTFS. It actually has its own advantages and disadvantages. You can't just go and use ReFS instead of NTFS on your system drive, right? So as ReFS is Microsoft's newest file system, it's actually designed to address a few major issues with NTFS. See, ReFS is designed to be more resilient against data corruption, perform better for certain workloads, and scale better for very large file systems. Why don't we just have a look and see exactly what that means? So resilient is, well, it's highlighted right here in the name, right? Resilient File System, ReFS, uses checksums for metadata. And it can optionally use checksums for file data as well. Keep that in the back of your mind. But whenever it reads or writes a file, ReFS examines the checksum to ensure it's correct. So this means the file system itself has a built-in way to detect data corruption on the fly. ReFS is integrated with Storage Spaces feature. Do you know about the Storage Spaces feature? So if you set up a mirrored storage space using ReFS, Windows can actually easily detect file system corruption and automatically repair problems just by copying the alternate copy of the data onto another drive. This feature is available on both Windows 10 and Windows 8.1. Now, if ReFS detects corrupted data and doesn't have an alternate copy it can restore from, you might ask? Well, the file system can immediately remove the corrupted data from the drive. Now, it doesn't require you to reboot your system or take the drive offline like NTFS does. ReFS also doesn't just check files for corruption when reading and writing them. An automated data integrity scanner regularly checks all files on the drive to identify and fix data corruption too. So it's an auto-correcting file system. So you don't need to use check disk at all. Now, the new file system is also resistant to data corruption in other ways as well. For example, when you update a file's metadata, the file name, for example, the NTFS file system will directly modify the file's metadata. Now, if your computer fails or the power goes out during this process, there may just be data corruption. But when you update a file's metadata, the ReFS file system will create a new copy of the metadata. See, ReFS points the file at the new metadata only after the new metadata is written. There's no risk of the file's metadata being corrupted. So it's also known as copy on write. You might have heard of that. Copy on write is also available on other modern file systems like ZFS and BTRFS on Linux, as well as Apple's new APFS file system. So ReFS is more modern than NTFS, and it supports much larger volumes and longer file names. And in the long term, these are definitely important improvements. On an NTFS file system, file paths are limited to 255 characters. But with ReFS, a file name can be up to 32,768 characters long. Now, Windows 10 also allows you to disable the short character limit for NTFS file systems, but it's always disabled on ReFS volumes. ReFS also discards the DOS-style 8.3 file names. So on an NTFS volume, you can still access the C drive program files at C program ~1, but for compatibility purposes with that older software. So you have to understand that the legacy file names are going to be gone if you're using ReFS. Now, like I said, NTFS has a theoretical maximum volume size of 16 exabytes. With ReFS, you've got a theoretical maximum volume size of 262,144 exabytes. And it doesn't really matter much right now, but it just might one day. Now, ReFS can be faster, sometimes. See, ReFS isn't just designed to improve all performance over NTFS. Instead, Microsoft's actually focusing on a few different important optimizations that make ReFS perform so much better in certain cases. Now, for example, let's say when you use storage spaces, ReFS supports real-time tier optimization. So you could have a drive pool with both drives optimized for performance and some drives optimized for capacity. ReFS will always write to the drives in the performance tier, maximizing performance. And then in the background, ReFS will automatically move large chunks of data to the slower drives for long-term storage. Now, in Windows Server 2016, Microsoft improved ReFS to offer better performance with certain virtual machine features. Microsoft's own Hyper-V virtual machine software takes advantage of these, and in theory, other virtual machine software could support them if they wanted to. I'll give you an example. ReFS supports block cloning, which accelerates virtual machine cloning and checkpoint merging operations. Now, to create a cloned copy of a virtual machine, ReFS only needs to create a new copy of metadata on the drive and then point it at existing data on the drive. That's because with ReFS, multiple files can point to the same underlying data on the disk. When the virtual machine changes and new data is written to the drive, it's written to a different location, and the original virtual machine data is left on the drive. And this makes the cloning process so much faster. It requires much less disk throughput as well. ReFS also offers a new sparse VDL feature. And this allows ReFS to quickly write zeros to a large file. And that makes it way faster to create a new empty, fixed-size virtual hard disk, or VHD file. Whereas it might take about 10 minutes with NTFS, it can take just a few seconds with ReFS. So when you're working on a typical Windows 10 PC, you can only use ReFS through the feature called storage spaces. So be sure to format your storage spaces as ReFS and not NTFS when you see the file system option. You automatically benefit from data integrity features in the ReFS file system as long as you choose it. Now, on Windows Server, you can choose to format some volumes as ReFS using the normal disk management tools, which may be particularly useful if you're using virtual machines on those drives. But you can't format your boot drive as ReFS, and you'll lose some access to some of the NTFS features. So ReFS functionality is now available as part of Windows 10 Pro for workstations as well as Windows 10 Enterprise. And guess what? Now you know everything there is to know about resilient file system. So I hope you learned a lot from this one, because we're going to take our knowledge forward. I'll see you in the next video.